In 1950s America, Jane Russell's scandalous hourglass figure caused an absolute frenzy. Her buxom chest was so popular, variety show host Bob Hope even once introduced her by saying, "The two and only Jane Russell." Jane Russell was known for playing sultry femme fatale-type song screen, but behind the scenes, she could be a goody two-shoes. She was a staunch Republican and devout Christian. That's not an exaggeration. Russell actually organized a weekly Bible study at her home, which she named the Hollywood Christian Group. In fact, while making her most famous film and the classic Gentlemen Prefer Blondes, Jane Russell actually tried to convert her co-star Marilyn Monroe to Christianity. As Monroe put it, "Jane tried to convert me, and I tried to introduce her to Freud." Obviously, neither woman budged in her beliefs. Russell's career began in a way that seems like a classic old Hollywood cliché. She was a buxom 19-year-old working in a humdrum job at a doctor's office when infamous Hollywood director Howard Hughes walked through the door. Hughes was well known for his love of beautiful young women, so to no surprise that he immediately focused on Jane Russell. Hughes insisted that he could make Russell a star, and before long she had signed a 7-year contract with him. First up was The Outlaw, a Western about infamous outlaw Billy the Kid, where she played his love interest. For her debut, she was paid the princely sum of $50 per week. It would be the movie that would put her on the map, but for all the wrong reasons. The sultry role of Rio and the Outlaw made a breakout star of Jane Russell, even though it was barely seen for nearly 5 years after its initial release. The film was supposed to come out in 1941, but the Hollywood Production Code Administration objected to the amount of skin that was shown, particularly by Russell. Hughes, who had directed the film, had to think fast, so he came up with a devious plan. Hughes had to cut some of the more salacious footage from the film, but the whole ordeal had scared off the film's distributor. And if it didn't get released, he'd lose millions. In order to draw attention to the film and create demand for it, he actually called for it to be banned. He manufactured public outcry, secretly calling concerned citizens to tip them off about the vulgar film. Somehow, this ploy worked. The attention that it drew to the film created a demand, but the story didn't end there. Upon its release, the production code once again pulled it. It was such a grueling process. Russell later said she felt as if she spent the first half of the 1940s doing nothing but promoting her debut film. The film was finally fully released in 1946, and it was a hit. The controversy over The Outlaw had made a star of Russell, and its success just cemented her place in Hollywood. That didn't mean Russell had made it, though. Her next movie, the 1946 drama Young Widow, was a failure. But it would take more than that to keep Jane Russell down. Of course, Russell wasn't exactly sitting on her hands while she waited for the release of The Outlaw. She posed for photos and became a popular pin-up girl during that time, especially with World War II's servicemen. Though it wasn't Russell's only connection to the armed forces, her father, Roy William Russell, had been a first lieutenant in the U.S. Army. However, it was her mother's footsteps that she followed in. Geraldine Russell had been an actress before starting their family in Bemidji, Minnesota. Jane ended up being the first of 5 children for the Russell family. Russell's mother was a stage mom if there ever was one. First, she urged her young daughter to take piano lessons. After that, Russell took drama classes and appeared in school plays in high school, before going on to take acting lessons from acclaimed coaches. It sounds like the perfect path to Hollywood stardom. But through it all, Russell's heart was elsewhere. Russell actually dreamed of becoming a fashion designer rather than an actress, but her mother had different ideas. She pushed her daughter through the dramatic arts, and then tragedy struck. Russell's father perished, leaving behind a wife and 5 children. As the oldest, Jane decided that she'd get a job as a receptionist to support her family. Of course, that job ended up leading her back to the stage anyway. When Howard Hughes walked through the door of the doctor's office where she worked, and he discovered her, while Hughes didn't get as creepy with her as he did other starlets, it was once quoted as saying, "There are two good reasons why men go to see Russell, and those are enough." When Hughes laid eyes upon Russell's soon-to-be infamous figure, he saw dollar signs, and he acted on it in a truly bizarre way. While making The Outlaw, Hughes designed a now infamous underwire bra, just for Russell to further propel her cleavage onwards and upwards for the movie. However, Russell later revealed the truth about the whole thing. In her autobiography, Russell said that she found Hughes' baffling bra invention to be incredibly uncomfortable, so she devised a way to get around wearing it. Russell hid the invention and wore her own bra, adjusting the straps and padding it out with tissues to fool the notorious director. Hughes's infamous invented bra now lives in a Hollywood museum. Russell was no fool, and she knew that Hughes and the rest of Hollywood were trading in on her curvaceous figure, but she also had her limits and wasn't shy about speaking up when things got too far. She said, "Appeal is good, but not in bad taste. Then it's ugly. I don't think a star has any business posing in a vulgar way." That's not to say that Russell was judgmental of her co-stars and peers. She had worked with Marilyn Monroe on Gentlemen Preferred Blondes and defended the star, saying that Monroe's pin-up calendar had been artistic, which kept it from being vulgar. Following the success of The Outlaw, Russell tried her hand at a musical career, but it didn't go exactly as she planned. Columbia Records released her innuendo-laden album Let's Put Out the Lights in 1947, but Russell later revealed that she hated the album, saying it was horrible. One song on the album's reissue, the subtly named Boying. Russell had spent years in Hollywood purgatory waiting for The Outlaw to be released, and over time, the endless delays took a major toll on her career. Finally, in 1948, Russell began to make something of a comeback once she was cast as Calamity Jane in The Pale Face. Thankfully, the flick was a massive hit for Paramount that year, but for Russell, the best was yet to come. Hughes hadn't just forgotten about Russell after all the trouble he'd gone through with The Outlaw, and when he gained control over RKO Pictures in 1948, he immediately signed her to a long-term contract. They had a very fruitful working relationship, and she starred in a number of RKO films over the next few years of her career. However, there was a dark side to it all. The type of films that Hughes cast Russell in focused only on her body, and she never really got a chance to show off her acting chops in those years. While many of the films were financial successes, they're not exactly the type of stuff that critics will still talk about today. As a result, many critics and fans have said that her talent was wasted during those years. Eventually, Russell's good looks were bound to land her a romance, and in 1943 she got one. That year, she got married to her high school sweetheart, Bob Waterfield, who was a quarterback for the UCLA Bruins at the time. Many expected the young couple to start a family, but sadly, Russell was hiding a dark secret. For exclusive perks like early access to new videos, priority replies to your comments, and to have your say on future content, consider becoming a Factor Nape member. On top of that, your support helps keep the channel going. Click the link in the description for more details. When Russell was just 18 years old, she became pregnant with Waterfield's child. Faced with a difficult choice at a young age, she ultimately chose to terminate the pregnancy. The procedure was difficult, and after experiencing severe complications, Russell went to see her family doctor for a checkup. According to Russell, when the doctor took a look at her that day, he asked her a terrifying question: "What butcher did this to you?" As it turned out, the botched procedure had left the young girl infertile. The aftermath of all this had stayed with Russell for the rest of her life. She became a vehement anti-choice activist. The voluptuous Russell was a popular pinup during the Korean War as well, so popular that the forces there named a pair of embattled hills in her honor. On top of that, she is the namesake for the Jane Russell Peaks in Alaska. During her contract with RKO Pictures, Russell was cast opposite Robert Mitchum and Vincent Price in His Kind of Woman. The looks, star power, and chemistry of the leads made it seem like the film would be a guaranteed blockbuster. At first, filming went off without a hitch. That isn't till Howard Hughes stepped in. While making His Kind of Woman, Mitchum came up with a cheeky nickname for Russell, calling her Hard John for her rigid Christian beliefs. Any other star might have taken offense, but Russell had a great sense of humor. When a reporter asked her about her reputation for being hard-nosed about her faith, she had a sassy retort. This can have big breasts too. With filming on His Kind of Woman completed, the cast looked forward to moving on to the next film project. The personicity Hughes demanded an entire year's worth of reshoots for the film, with the cast now annoyed and fighting each other, even throwing an anniversary party for the shoots. If Russell thought her ordeal was over after finally wrapping His Kind of Woman, she was sorely mistaken. Her next project was the Hughes-produced Macau, and this time she had to deal with temperamental Austrian director Josef von Sternberg, who quickly made enemies of most of the cast, but who had a special dislike for Russell. While working on the film, von Sternberg sniped that Russell was a beautiful, stupid girl. There were fights on set, and the director constantly threatened to fire his actors, but in the end, it was von Sternberg who got fired himself. Then, after all that, the film ended up a financial flop. It was yet another setback for Russell, but her patience would soon pay off. Gentlemen Prefer Blondes was just around the corner and cemented Russell's status as Hollywood royalty. In fact, Russell even got paid more than her co-star Marilyn Monroe. But despite this competition, Monroe spoke fondly of Russell in the final interview she gave before her tragic passing, saying that Russell was quite wonderful to me. The success of Gentlemen Prefer Blondes wasn't the only triumph for Russell that year. After her disastrous and lengthy contract with Howard Hughes through RKO Pictures, Russell was finally able to strike out on her own. Instead of signing with another studio, Russell and her husband Bob Waterfield began Russell Field Productions. Russell and Waterfield also had exciting success on the home front. In the early 50s, the longtime couple adopted a baby girl. Soon after that, they added to their family by adopting a baby boy, and a few years later, another son. It should have been the happiest time of their lives, but instead, it stirred up a dark controversy that nearly ruined Russell's life. Russell was working on a play in London when, during an interview, she said that she wanted to adopt an Irish boy due to her husband's heritage. A young Irish mother named Hannah McDermott saw the interview. Reading it, she envisioned a better life for her infant son Thomas. She reached out to Russell and set the wheels in motion. Russell and McDermott came to an agreement over little Thomas, and soon after, Russell took him home, and the Waterfields became a family of 4. McDermott gave an interview to the Daily Mail about the adoption, which ran with the headline, "My baby has gone to fairyland." When the paper came out, it caused an uproar. One British politician was so outraged that he called for baby Thomas's return to the UK. Hannah McDermott, meanwhile, was charged with breaking adoption laws, and people angrily protested outside Russell's home. Although Russell hired a lawyer for McDermott and got her free and clear, the damage was already done. Russell had immediately connected to the young boy for a heartbreaking reason. It reminded her of her younger brother Billy, who had passed away at just 16 months old. While Tommy went on to live happily ever after in Hollywood with Russell, things weren't so easy for his birth mother. She perished young at just 53, and the circumstances are chilling. She left a pub with a man, and the next day her remains were found in her burned-out home. It was likely that the fire was set to cover her homicide, which remained unsolved. Russell's troubling experience with adoption turned her into an advocate, and in 1955 she found an organization meant to facilitate foreign adoptions for U.S. families, which at the time weren't yet common. She called it the World Adopting International Fund, aka WAIF. Since its inception, the organization has helped over 50,000 children get adopted. Despite the uproar in the UK, Russell's career made a quick recovery stateside. She put in the work, and eventually the critics came around to appreciating her not just for her body, but for her talent as well. However, disappointment was just around the corner. Russell countered the 1957 film The Fuzzy Pink Nightgown among her best work, but it was a flop. Sadly, the failure of The Fuzzy Pink Nightgown went far beyond disappointing ticket sales. It also spelled the end of the production company that Russell began with her husband, Bob Waterfield. For most of the next decade, she only occasionally appeared in films and mostly stuck to television and music. Chalking it up to her advanced age, she was in her mid-30s. After spending a quarter of a century together and adopting 3 kids, high school sweethearts Russell and Bob Waterfield seemed solid as a rock, but heartbreak was lurking in the shadows. In 1967, Russell filed for divorce only for Waterfield to file a countersuit, saying that his soon-to-be ex drank too much and was prone to habitual intemperance. The terms of their custody agreement were far from conventional for that era. While the eldest 2 children, Tracy and Thomas, went to live with Russell, custody of the youngest of their adopted brood, Robert John, was given to Waterfield. If the breakup of Russell's 25-year marriage shocked her fans, they were in for even more surprise. Just 2 short months after her divorce, Russell hastily married actor Roger Barrett. The timing revealed the dark side of her previous marriage. It turns out that both spouses had cheated on the other. In the end, Waterfield's affair with his secretary drove Russell to file for divorce. Sadly, just 3 months after Russell's wedding to her second husband, tragedy struck. Russell and Barrett were only married for 3 months when Barrett suffered a sudden, fatal heart attack. After 25 years and 3 months of love and loss, Russell was unexpectedly alone for the first time since high school. It took time, but eventually Russell fell in love again. 6 years after the loss of her second husband, she filed for an estate agent named John Calvin Peoples. The couple wed in 1974, and unlike Russell's other walks down the aisle, this one was built to last. Russell and Peoples remained together until its passing in 1999. Russell never remarried after him. Shortly after the passing of her third husband, Russell revealed a dark and surprising secret. She admitted that she had a drinking problem and entered rehab, all at the age of 79 years old. Russell confessed that she began to drink after the loss of her husband and that her family had to confront her about her problem and urged her to seek treatment. While Russell's youngest son didn't come to live with her after the end of her first marriage, she moved close to him and his family in the final years of her life. In 2006, her eyesight began to deteriorate. Again, a few years later, after suffering from a respiratory illness, Russell's sensational life ended in February 2011. The screen siren was 89 years old. Gentlemen Preferred Blonde was one of Russell's most well-known films, but the ultimate fates of her and her co-star Marilyn Monroe were starkly different. Russell credits her marriage and family for keeping her in line in Hollywood. However, she also revealed her own dark suspicions about Monroe's infamously tragic end. In a 2007 interview, Russell said that she was suspicious of Monroe's passing. She explained that the blonde bombshell had been preparing to remarry Joe DiMaggio and had been excited about a new movie contract. As a result, Russell just didn't think Monroe took her own life. Rather, she said, someone did it for her. There were dirty tricks. When the interviewer brought up Monroe's connection to the Kennedys, Russell agreed that she believed they had a part in her friend's untimely demise. If you enjoyed this fact in a video, give it a thumbs up and subscribe for more incredible stories. Want to see who we cover next? Join our membership program through the link in the description for exclusive perks. Your support means everything to us. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.